Coming up on this episode of Common Denominator.
When the storms went up and I got right on this condensed tornado, I could see the funnel, but then all of a sudden all the dust went up and basically you just get blinded by dust. And then you're in a situation where, oh, wow, I don't know where I can't visually see this tornado anymore. So best guess on how to get out of the way.
This is Common Denominator, straight-up conversations with Moshe Popack. Relying on critical thinking and open-spirited debate, we invite you to find common ground on everyday issues and encourage you to be bold, to be optimistic, and to take action. To learn more, head to MoshePopack.com, and we'd be so grateful if you'd like, share, and subscribe to the show. Now, here's your host, Moshe Popack.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Common Denominator. Today, finding common ground on how to best face what scares us the most. We all have fears, and we all have different ways of dealing with them. But wouldn't it be great to run full speed into your fear and take away its power? This week's guest is Edgar O'Neal Jr., a.k.a. Edgar the Storm Chaser. In 2013, he and his family had to run from the El Reno tornado, one of the most powerful tornadoes in history, with winds up to 296 miles per hour. After that, he vowed never to fear tornadoes again. So he became a storm chaser. He'll share that powerful mind shift and what it's like to seek out and photograph some of the most violent storms on Earth. Hi, Edgar, and welcome to Common Denominator.
How's it going?
Great. I think it's super fascinating what you do. And I want to go back to El Reno 2013 and how you got started chasing storms.
Absolutely. So 2013 was a year after I moved to Oklahoma. I lived in Florida up until that point. And so when I moved to Oklahoma, I have to start off first like this. I was kind of interested in storm chasing, and I had went out one or two times that first year. But I didn't I was just riding along. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't understand radar or anything. Well, fast forward a year later, 2013 El Reno tornado, biggest tornado in history, 2.6 miles wide. The tornado itself is 2.6 miles wide. Incredible. Some of the highest wind velocities ever recorded on Earth. It came within, I don't know, like 1 or 2 miles of my home. So, and I didn't know anything about radar or weather. I didn't know how to look. So basically it looked like this. I got home from work that day. Tornado sirens started going off. I looked on the TV. They were like, there's this catastrophic tornado coming, towards your town. If you don't have an underground shelter, you need to leave. We didn't have one. So I have 2 stepkids, my wife, and 2 dogs. And I actually had a friend over that day. And so we just realized we had to leave. So we got in the car and had to start driving away from it. We ended up at the National Weather Service in Norman, Oklahoma, which is about 30 miles from my house, and got in a shelter there. And it was terrifying.
Well, I just want to go back just 1 second. Did I hear that right? In other words, when you moved originally from Florida to Oklahoma, you did have in your mind that you wanted to chase storms, or you did a little bit of that?
So I'm an adrenaline junkie. So what I wanted to do was just go on a ride along with someone, because I was like, oh, that sounds fun, right? Like adrenaline seeking. So I went on a couple of those, and I actually didn't even see a tornado that year before with the guy I was chasing with. But I had just went out like 2 times, I think, with him. But like I said, I was just like a ride along passenger. So yeah, I wanted to experience almost any adrenaline seeking thing. So,
so you're driving, you're at the weather center. What happens at that point?
Oh man. So I tried to get my wife. I mean, it was literally a scene out of a movie, man. I'm like driving, we get to the place where there's a shelter, an underground shelter. And this is at the University of Oklahoma, by the way, is where the National Weather Service is in Norman. I mean, people are just driving their cars up on hills, grass, like getting as close as they can to the door of this building. I mean, and if you've ever been to that campus, beautiful. No one cared. It was just like straight panic mode. I remember getting out of my car first. The wind was blowing so hard when I got out, it kind of knocked me to the ground. It was slippery, but it was with the wind, with the wet ground, knocked me to the ground. We're carrying my 2 dogs, my 2 stepkids, my friend, my wife are all getting in there.
Was there any major injury to you or your family or friends?
Not to anyone that I know. But there was several really famous storm chasers died that day. And I just remember hated that feeling of like not knowing. I'm kind of a person that likes to know everything and likes to feel in control. I think that might be normal, but I felt really out of control. And that was when I was like, no, I'm never again will I be like this. I'm going to learn everything I can about doing this.
So I like that. Maybe that plays in. I do meet a lot of people. You call yourself an adrenaline junkie.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think that comes from?
That's actually a question I've never thought about answering. So that's kind of cool. So, if I think back on it, I memean, I think for most of my life, I had been that way. Like, I like the feeling of excitement. Let's just say that, those butterflies that you get in my head. I think the way I always say it is that I feel like it's probably the same feeling other people get from fear. And I think I might interpret it differently. I don't know. Like,
right.
That's the way I feel. I feel like, like for me, people interpret that as being scared. Me, I interpret that as excitement.
Right. It's feeling alive. And the reason why I want to bring that out, because I think on the other side of fear is actually being alive. So I admire that you're on the other side, that you're wired the other way. And that's the advice that I kind of think about to give to the listeners is learn everything about a certain topic. So now here you are, right? So here you are, and you were not in control, and then you made a decision.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, in times you have those decisions you make where you don't really remember the instant you made them. And then there's other ones where you can literally pinpoint it when your brain switched. This is one of those. Like it was right after that. Actually, sitting in that shelter, I remember in my head thinking, and for me, honestly, that day, let's just be real. It wasn't like a lot of fear for me. It's my kids and family, so that was like, I was like, man, like, even as a provider and as a, and as a dad and a husband, like I kind of felt like I let people, let them down a little bit because I didn't have that information as well. So a lot of my fear for that type of situation, that's kind of where that fear came from.
I guess from that instant, like you said before, you said you made a choice. I'm going to chase storms a little bit out of the box. Right.
It is.
So that's so tell us about the process of, first of all, I guess, you got to talk to your family about that. Right. So there's in their mind, the risks. Right. So how are those conversations going, and how did you get them to get buy-in?
When I decided to do that, this is probably one of the most comical things. If you knew my wife, she's amazing and awesome, but she was like, no, I don't. She's so supportive. I think, I will support you if you do that, but I'm going to up your life insurance policy. And that's literally was what she told me. And, and she super supports me. And actually my kids, it's so weird. Like they're not even fazed by it. I mean, they're both in high school, getting close to graduating now. And like they just think I'm just, I don't know. They don't even care. They act like it's nothing. Also, they lived in Oklahoma. My kids lived here the majority of their life. My wife lived here a lot longer than I have. And if you live in Oklahoma, you understand that storm chasing is a relatively normal thing. A lot of people do it. So I think for them, it wasn't that big of a deal for me. And they knew me, and they already knew, my adrenaline junkie status. So
I think that's super cool. You think, and you'll see, I guess, as my oldest is 16, and I guess as the kids get older, you'll see how much of your traits they take. But I think that in this life, I think that's a tremendous value add, the way you're wired to face fear and get educated head on. I mean, I have, I guess, not fear. I fly a lot, but I had to get comfortable. So I did a lot of research on airplanes and pilots, and so getting educated. So you're in better control of things.
100%. So that lack of knowledge is a really big deal in my mind when it comes to anything fear related.
So what's your framework when you're chasing storms? In other words, I know you're not a meteorologist, and what was that process of getting educated?
The guy that had taken me out ride-alongs a couple times, I asked him if he'd kind of teach me. And so he kind of, about 2.5 years, kind of a apprentice type of a situation. I went out, he started showing me all the knowledge, how to read radar, what to look for in the sky, like all that kind of stuff. And then also at the same time, I went down and took a 16-week course at the same National Service building that I sheltered in on how to forecast severe weather. Because as a storm chaser, it is very important. I do my own forecast before I go out, because it's a lot more, you just can't look at the news and stuff like that. It's way more detailed and specific, spot oriented. So yeah, I did that apprentice process, and then I took that course. And then honestly, let's just be real, YouTube. I mean, I probably watched, thousands of hours of videos on, there's a lot of resources on there for even other chasers, and watching their storm chases and just learning a lot. And then, and then after about 3 years is when I started going out on my own.
I love that idea, and that applies to many different skill sets, is watching video, watching tape.
Oh, yeah.
You don't realize the brain is a computer system, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you see the video or you can visualize, or you create your own, it helps you create the dendrites to create a framework that something is possible. You see the movie, and then the action happens afterwards. So,
100%.
right?
Yeah, it's an effective way of learning. 100. And whenever you watch those, I love that you said your computer's like a brain. I mean, your brain's like a computer, because it really is. And so the way I look at it is, you want to have all that information in there so that, maybe if you do get in that stressful situation to where you're starting to lose that function of your prefrontal cortex, and you're going back to your like lower brain, that's like your more evolutionary type brain thing, like that your actions will align with all that information you have stored in your head, maybe not even consciously sometimes, but just getting all that knowledge in there, I think, is really important, especially in these type of situations to where you can be in like life-threatening, quick decision situations, which are in often storm chasing.
And it's interesting with video, what I found with video is that you don't have to actually, in order to get those chemicals and that feeling in your brain, because it all starts from there, you don't actually have to live it physically. You can watch the tape, and then you create that kind of muscle memory. So
100%.
I'm a big advocate of the videotape. So now you've decided that this is kind of your journey. Tell us about some of your most, scariest or most memorable storms you've chased.
Okay, yeah. So the most memorable was a storm in eastern Colorado, northeastern Colorado, and it was. And when you talk with storm chasers, we'll always like mention the towns. We'll call it the Ray, Colorado tornado, because that's what it was. It was in Ray, W-R-A-Y, Colorado. It was just like this crazy big funnel, so some tornadoes have rain around them, some don't. This one didn't have rain. Those are the ones without rain are way cooler. You can get up close to it. But what made this one so special? It was an amazing tornado, but my dad also wanted to go. So he flew here and had 1 day to chase. And it's hard to see tornadoes in a 1 day thing. And we saw like the tornado of a lifetime. And honestly, like getting to see my dad, like had the biggest smile on his face I think I'd ever seen in his life. And so that was my most memorable chase.
You have to do a lot of research before, because I assume the tornado, in other words, what's actually happening in the process.
So you do your forecast where you're like, okay, I think the storms are going to form in this area. And your goal is to be in that target area before any like storms go up. So it's just like little white fluffy clouds. So you go, you do that process, then you go wait, and then storms start going up, and then there might be multiple ones. And then you have to know which storm to get on all of those. And these storms sometimes are 30 and 40 miles apart. So you go get on that storm. And then honestly, you have to there's usually only a couple places, positions around the storm that you can actually see the tornado. So then you got to be on the right spot on the right storm when you get it. And honestly, most tornadoes stay on the ground, less than a minute.
Wow. I didn't realize.
So like it's so hard. It's like a very like precise type of thing.
Wow. So I love that. I mean, I always go back to the famous, the Wizard of Oz, right? So it's like the storm's coming, and it just seems to like last forever in my mind as a child, right? But actually, that's interesting. That's fascinating. It's only like a minute. So there's a lot of precise work to that. That's interesting. But I want to go back. Was there ever a time that you were in really real danger?
Yeah, yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah, let's be honest. Most of the time when you're storm chasing, you have to be honest with yourself. And especially I do up close and personal. Some people call it like extreme storm chasing. I get relatively close. And so, yeah, yesterday was pretty crazy. I was chasing in Texas Panhandle area, and yeah, just there's a drought there. So an interesting thing happened yesterday where when the storms went up and I got right on this condensed tornado, I could see the funnel, but then all of a sudden all the dust went up and basically you just get blinded by dust. Mm-hmm. And then you're in a situation where, oh, wow, I don't know I can't visually see this tornado anymore. So best guess on how to get out of the way. And then that tornado turned into a relatively large tornado, and then it became nighttime and I chased right behind it. And then actually we ended up going through the debris path. If we would have been about a half a mile further, there was we came up on a storm chasing van that had been turned over, all kinds of stuff. So we were basically right on the edge of danger yesterday all day long.
So I guess the more and more storms you chase, the closer you get, right? So how close actually are you to, I guess, the center of the tornado?
Oh, okay. So yesterday, I think I probably got within a few hundred yards yesterday. Maybe it's hard to say because once it got nighttime, honestly, couldn't tell you how far I was away from it. You couldn't see. It was really dark and dusty. But the closest I've ever been, I got the back of my car picked up and spun around. So I actually touched the outer circulation of a wedge tornado wow. in 2016. So yeah, I've gotten that close. Yeah.
And I know you photograph your experience. Do you do any live streaming as well?
Absolutely. I do live streaming on TikTok and YouTube. And it's kind of fun. Like when you live stream storm chasing, it's like bringing all your friends along with you. So you get to show all these people tornadoes. Is really cool.
If I would just people are able to come with you on your ride, chasing storms if they wanted to.
Yeah. So there's a couple things. Obviously there's a liability issue. So I usually want to be pretty comfortable with the person, right? If I'm going to take them out. But yeah, I've taken so many of my friends, first time storm chasing. That's honestly one of my favorite things is to take someone out for the first time. I on my YouTube channel, I do a little series called Chasing with Edgar, where I bring other musicians and content creators first time storm chasing, just because I think that's really fascinating to watch someone experience it for the first time.
And I know besides all this fun and great work you're doing, you also have a not-for-profit, Dirty Feet Missions. Tell us a little bit about the philanthropy you're doing.
Yeah. So my mother started that organization, and then about 2 years ago, she asked me if I wanted to come aboard as a co-director. Because she's getting older and looking for someone to take over, and she knows that I have a social work humanitarian heart. So I started doing that, and what we do there, mainly one of the main things we do, the majority of our work's in Guatemala and the country of Guatemala. Pana Shell is the town specifically, but we just we do things like we opened the first female only drug and alcohol rehabilitation center for women specifically in Guatemala. We do work in Haiti as well. We support and help run an orphanage for children that most of their parents died in the last 2 earthquakes that had happened there as well.
So in other words, I guess bringing people together to find purpose and mission, purpose in their lives and meaning by bringing them, let's say, to Guatemala to to help impoverished communities. I think it's beautiful.
Exactly. Yeah. And part of our mission is to be very, very specific about that. As far as we don't go in there and try to bring we don't go in here and say, all right, well, we're not trying to bring American culture in and say, this is what's right and it's wrong. It's basically meeting people where they're at, helping them with their needs. But also you have to, when you're helping people, one of the things that I think it's common sense, but a lot of people don't do is you kind of need to listen to the people, right? To see what help you want. Because I feel sometimes we go into places and you just try to help, but you're really not helping. You're just doing what your idea of help is. So we're really conscious about, we have a bunch of people that live in Guatemala on a board, and they actually help derive, people that are a part of that culture that help derive what type of help we do.
I know you mentioned you have a humanitarian side. What would be the utopia in your mind, in your vision of humanitarian? I know you said kind of before we each have our own vision of it. I'm just curious what yours is.
Oh man, If there was an ideal utopian society, it would just be a place where everyone accepted everyone for who they are. I think that's kind of for me, I feel like that's like a common denominator, so to speak, of why society has all the problems that it has. I think that's the deriving part.
I love that very much, because I think the ultimate question, starting off your day, just ask yourself, you don't want to be judged by other people. And the only way that happens is if you don't judge other people and don't judge self. And that way is live and let live, right?
Yep.
And the problem is in society where we are too much looking at other people and judging them. So I think we need to start fresh from that perspective. Be radically open-minded.
Yes, you have to be, and you're right. It starts with you. Like, you have to, I always tell people, like, you're not ever going to be non-judgmental until you admit that you're actually judgmental, because we all are, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to be aware of those, those judgments and those stereotypes that you have. And then you can curve your behavior based on that. If you're aware of it, then you can make sure you don't treat other people based on maybe a stereotype that you have. And then that helps you actually start getting rid of stereotypes. But that's kind of the method that I try to take every day.
Yeah, I find that people that do a lot of self-work, and it seems very much that you have, it's that self-awareness. And begin, I want to harp on that for a second, is that we should all begin that work of self-awareness, being aware of self, being aware of others, and how we treat other people. And if people I want to thank you so much, Edgar. This has been super exciting to hear about the work you're doing. Tell us, if people want to follow you on your storm chasing or find out a little bit more about your not-for-profit Dirty Feet missions, how can they do that?
Yeah, it's also at this point, Edgar the Storm Chaser is on every social media platform, and it's just Edgar the Storm Chaser, all separated. So that's how you'd be able to find me on TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that kind of stuff. So it's all under that. So it's pretty easy. If you Google it, I'm pretty much the whole list. And then my nonprofit, dirtyfeetmissions.org. That's where you can find all our information and what we do, what we're about, the trips that we have, all the different projects that we work on.
Well, thank you so much, Edgar. Really, and obviously stay safe. And it's super exciting. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Common Denominator podcast. Join us next week for another inspiring, impactful, and empowering conversation. To learn more about Moshe, head to MoshePopack.com. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to share it. And we'd be grateful if you could rate, review, and subscribe to the show.